So this is a coal pack condenser for a walk-in set. They share a coil, meaning this is the only unit on the roof for the walk-in freezers here and the coolers here. They share the coil. They have independent systems. Inside there are 2 different compressors, 2 different line sets, 2 separate sections of coil, but they share the fans and they share the coil. So we're here to do a PM on this today, and actually all this ice on the compressor is fairly problematic. So we're gonna take a look at that while we're here, see what we can see. The coils right off the bat, looking at them, are pretty gross and greasy. It's not like it's plugged up solid, but as you look at it, this is a restaurant that does hamburgers. So they put out a very special kind of grease. That definitely manifests itself on equipment nearby. So let me get out the coil cleaning supplies and we'll get started. All right, I've sprayed this down with water first. So I've got my foaming coil gun. I'm gonna set it on C, which is 6 to 1. It's pretty strong. I'm gonna go ahead and I don't feel like that's foaming. Yep, it is. All right. Yeah. And here's the gunk. This is a foaming cleaner, so the longer it sits there, it's going to froth up and it's going to push the debris out from inside the coil. So we're going to let this marinate. Alright, so we're back up and running. So in this electrical panel, you've got, this is your contactor for the blower fan. You look at the purple wire coming from the coil of it, you'll see it's attached to each other contactor because it's activated by either one. So that's the fan for both of those fans in there behind the condenser. This is your freezer, and this is your cooler. You can see that the center is pulled in on that one. The freezer is engaged right now, the cooler is not. The cooler's satisfied. It ran for a minute when I turned it on, then it's satisfied. So, cooler's running. Sorry, freezer's running, not cooler. The timer wasn't set properly, so it was about 12:30 when I fired it up, so I set it for 12:30. You'll see these are defrosts, 15 minutes per tick. Right, so this is technically a 45-minute defrost 4 times a day. But there's a defrost termination switch that's based on temperature down there. So that it'll run up to 45 minutes, but when the coil itself gets to be a certain temperature after, let's say, 26 minutes, it'll actually kick it out and start it up. So electronically, this one's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot of nonsense in here. This happening could be for a couple reasons, right? I'm not going to put gauges on it yet, but seeing that it's coming back, so here's a good identifier way, right? So you've got two compressors, you've got two sets of line sets. Which is the cooler and which is the freezer? Well, the suction lines, which are the larger ones, and the cool ones coming back, the larger suction line is always going to be for the freezer. Okay? So you're running lower pressures, lower temperatures, so larger suction line. So you can see the size difference. So this is your cooler, this is your freezer. The fact that this is coming back all frozen like that could be a couple reasons. I haven't been inside yet to check. Especially since it's back to the compressor. So it could be that we're low on Freon, right? So the pressure's coming back so low that it's just freezing up. Or it could be that the evaporator inside is dirty and it isn't properly heat transferring out of the Freon, right? So it's supposed to be evaporating the Freon and turning it into, it's a liquid in the evaporator and it's supposed to turn it into a vapor and then it's supposed to come up. Nope, I said that completely backwards. Yeah, no, it is a liquid. I did not. It's a liquid down in the evaporator. The evaporator boils it and sends it back as a vapor. So if this isn't been properly boiled off, then it's coming back as a liquid. Too cold, and liquid running into a compressor is a good way to tear up a compressor prematurely. So I'm going to leave this running, and we're going to run downstairs and check the state of the evaporator. All right, welcome to the evaporator, where it is 4 below. So both the fans are spinning in the right direction. The evaporator coil itself is pretty clear, so there's a lot of airflow moving through there. So it is appropriately boiling off, at least it should be. The fact that this is so frozen up is, one of a couple things now. Either it's low on Freon, like I said. It never satisfies. If this thing satisfies for 10 minutes out of the hour, then that's 10 minutes where you don't have subarctic temperatures flowing through the Freon and everything can kind of chill out a little bit. But still, when you're 2 degrees in here, you're not going to melt. Very interesting. All right, so about to get some gauges. I want to show you the cooler. So this is a situation where you walk in and then you walk through the cooler to get to the freezer, and so there's an evaporator here as well. So this is part of what I'm here to do today, right? We're doing a PM upstairs. So look at all the dust. So we're gonna get to it. It's all part of the agenda, but yeah, that's why I gotta clean evaporators, because that'll plug it up and then it won't boil off the Freon properly. Alright, let's talk about gauges for a second. So I keep these little stubbies in my backpack, so when I just need to hook up for exploratory purposes, I don't lose all of the Freon from my system by using my big hose. So this system is a 404 A system. That's the cooler, but the freezer is the same. They're both 404. So how this works is the outer ring is the physical PSI. So this unit is running at 225 PSI right now. And that is measuring the high side. So that's measuring the liquid line, which is coming out of the condenser. So it leaves the compressor, runs in, through the coils, comes out cooled. And being 404, if you notice the orange right here, that's a 404A. So that's the corresponding temperature to the pressure. So at 225 PSI, that is about, 96 degrees. So this line is leaving at 96 degrees, running downstairs. It is then going downstairs, hitting a TXV, which is choking it down and turning it into super low pressure. boiling it off and bringing it back. So this is the low side. This is what's coming back. You can see it's only coming back at 20 psi. And again, we're doing it 404, so that's the orange ring. So we're at negative 16, negative 17 degrees. That's a little low. You want it to be negative 10. Normally I'm running 25, 26 psi. That gives you a negative 10 degree coil. Now, negative 10 and negative 17 are both stupid freezing, and they're both going to freeze up a little bit. But I'm tempted to put a little bit of gas in this unit because it can take it. When I look at the sight glass, which I'll show you, see these two. These are your sight glasses. The front one's for the cooler, the back one's for the freezer. And it's not bubbling, so it's not egregiously low on freon. There's no issue with that. But that's what the gauges tell me. It doesn't need freon, like, oh no, we're low. We're not flashing, but the pressure's a little low. But while I'm here doing a PM, I'm going to go ahead and put a splash in it, bring that up to about 25, 26 psi. All right, so the unit's satisfied and shut down. So I've got my manifold hooked up. I only hooked up to the low side because that's where I'm going to put the Freon in. I don't need to be hooked up to the high side because I am right there. So I'm connected to my bottle here. I like these quick shutoffs, and I'll show you why. So this one is off right now. So let me make sure that's tight. That's tight. I'm going to crack the bottle. Okay, so the unit just came on. That's the pressures. Supposed to be the benefit of digital gauges, right? So do you trust the digital gauge being correct? All right, I'm gonna crack this bottle open. I'm gonna turn it upside down up here. All right, so the crack there. I'm gonna loosen this. All right. And now I'm going to open this real slow until I get my gas. See the gas? There you go. Close that. And now I'm purged out. In reality, oh, hang on. There we go. In reality, I've still got a little air right here. If I crack this, I don't know if I can do this one hand. There we go. All right. Yeah, 27. I wouldn't add gas to this. So 27, this is running a negative 5 degree coil. I mean, that's spot on. As opposed to this, it says we're running 20. Fun times. Check something else. All right, so the time is now 1:15, and you can see my clock is about 5 minutes behind. So it started at 12:30. I set it at 12:30, and then we've kept the power on the whole time. And I mean, all I'm doing is testing the functionality of the clock, right? So it's powered. There's gears in there turning that clock just like a normal clock. But they start to fail and get slow, kind of like when a battery's dying on a wall clock. So we've lost 5 minutes in almost an hour. So is that a huge deal? You go, well, over 4 hours, it's 20 minutes. So over 4 cycles, it's an hour and 20 minutes. You know, that's not terrible. It's spreading out where you say, oh, I think I'm defrosting every 4 hours. No, you're not. You're defrosting every 4.5 hours. But it's not the cause of our problem for sure. But just something to keep an eye on. If it was much worse, you know, I'll keep it on the radar. I'm not going to change it for sure. There's no sense in doing that. But that's part of the PM, is get it cleaned up, get it set proper and running, and then monitor that time to see. Because if a defrost clock goes bad on a freezer, that freezer's going out. So, well worth preventatively changing one that you see is failing. The cooler's running right now. The freezer's not. It's still satisfied. I'm going to do a test. One, I took my stubbies off and I put my real gauges on just to make sure it wasn't a port issue. Obviously it's not, but we're not running it. So these are just stale temperatures. They're stale. You can see that the ice is melted quickly around the compressor, working its way back to suction line. So, like I said, it just needs to satisfy more frequently, and that wouldn't happen. The reason for the probe is I just want to verify that it's not coming back as a liquid. So when it fires up, we can use our gauge like a chart. So if it's coming back at 23, when you look at the orange dot and you say, oh, that's going to be negative 15. That doesn't mean it is negative 15. That means at 23 degrees, 23 psi, 404 is a vapor at 11 below. Anything above 11 below, and you're a vapor. So, you're going to find out that once this is running and we're actually measuring the temperature coming back, that the Freon itself is probably coming back at, I'm going to guess, 22 degrees, right? We'll see how well that goes. And when this runs, as long as that Freon's coming back at, you know, more than 10 below, then it's not coming back as a liquid. We're not damaging the compressor, and I can stop chasing this ghost that isn't a problem. But I need to verify it's not a problem first. Okay, she just kicked on. Alright, so now watch the magic. This is the literal temperature of the Freon. This isn't a theoretical pressure-temperature relationship. That is a temperature clamp on the probe, 8 degrees. Right now we're running 30, so it was a vapor at 2 below. We don't have any risk of compressor damage right now. So, 10 degrees of superheat. Superheat is the distance between those two numbers. So, right, we wanted to heat it to -2. We did that. And then we only heated it to 7. 9 degrees of superheat, that's pretty tight. If there weren't enough Freon in this system, for example, then we would have boiled it off way too early in the evaporator. It would have kept going and gotten hotter and hotter, and it would be coming back at a much higher temperature. You know, you could have 30 degrees of superheat, meaning we're wasting depth, if you will, of coil. You know, we only needed to heat it to -2. We've heated it to 8. Great. If that were 18, we'd go, well, you can look up the compressor and see what is the, through the Copeland app, or there's all sorts of mobile apps. The Blue On app is good. You can look up the compressor and it'll tell you what the manufacturer says the superheat should be. And that is adjusted on the TXV inside which we'll get to. But yeah, no. So my paranoia satisfied. We're not freezing up because of slugging back liquid or anything. We're freezing up because the insulation is very good, and it's allowing it to condensate and freeze. All right, we'll move on to cleaning the evaporators. Take a look. This is my stubby low side. It's sitting at 4 below. I didn't think checking the screw was starting at 0. There's a little adjustment screw right there. You can take the cover off and adjust it. So that's why it was reading 20 when it was really 24. I gotta pay attention to little details though. You guys help me with that at least. So my high side is actually set a little bit high as well, so I'm gonna see if I can show you. So we ever so slightly adjust how it responds, so that we can dial it into 0. There you go. And we're set. And then the cover just slides on like that. The worst part about the those little stubby gauges not being calibrated isn't making a stupid mistake or, you know, not paying attention to a little detail. It's that I didn't need those two things up here. I did not need to bring the Freon or my gauges up. And now I gotta get them down. All right, so moving on to the evaporators. The freezer evaporator looked really good. This is the cooler evaporator. There's a switch there that actually controls the evaporator power, so it was easy enough to just kill that. I've actually sprayed this with coil cleaner, and now I'm letting it marinate, and I've got the hose in here, and we're gonna rinse it off. This is the cooler, and this should go without saying, but you know, you can't bring the hose into the freezer with disregard because it's a freezer. But there is a tray here. I'm king. Boo. There it is. I could edit this stuff out, but what fun would that be? This is real life. So there's a drain pan here, goes into there. Adios. So as long as you spray slowly, even in a freezer when you have to defrost the coil, you can do that. Nice and gentle. You can see the difference. Can see in the pan that the water's getting kind of full. So let me give it a second for it to glug, glug, glug. So this evaporator cleaner, it actually does not need to be rinsed if you mix it like 10 to 1, because the evaporator sweats and it'll automatically rinse it. But this evaporator was so crusty from a debris standpoint that I wanted the pressure to clear off the coils. There you go. All right. Now we're back on. my temperature probe. I measure output air, and then I measure actual box temperature, which is in here somewhere. It's just back there. So that I can tell remotely with my system if not only is it box temperature, but what's the output temperature. Because if the box temperature is 34 degrees and my output temperature is 25, I know it's cooling. If my box temperature is 44 degrees and my output temperature is 44 degrees, then I know I'm not cooling regardless of what the system says. All right, clean coil.